Welcome to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa. Sponsored by Carnation. Airing live on United Public Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. This show's opening has been produced, edited, narrated by Gwen Luckett at gluckett.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. You have to do a few things in order to participate in chat. Go to YouTube UFO Paranormal Radio. You can go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, Twitch, SoundCloud, Podbean, and of course our group Horsefly Chronicles Radio on Facebook. And if you guys have any questions for our guests, please ask. So tonight, guys, we have two amazing guests to the show. So please welcome to the show Chinelle and Rachel. They are from Elite Vixen Paranormal. They are an all-female team based in Middle Tennessee with over 40 years of paranormal research experience. They represent the women in the field. Tonight we are going to dive into some of their investigations they have done and how they all became a team and so much more. So please let's welcome them to the show. Yay!
Welcome.
Hi,
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on tonight.
Yes, thank you for having us.
We have been talking.
Well, so an all-women team. That's interesting. I never seen an all-women team before. So how did you guys get started?
So back in 2018, Samantha and I were on another team, had males and females, and during that time, Samantha specifically, more so than I did, really experienced a lot of. She noticed the inequality. And even though like we all were supposed to be admins and we all were supposed to be equal, she noticed that things were not. And then we had one investigation that kind of like put the nail in the coffin, so to speak. Sam and I were both running it, but it was really like we weren't running it. And there was a lot of like just things that didn't really align with us. And a whole situation had happened, and we were like, okay, well, that's the end of that. So Samantha had already been toying with the idea of like creating our own team. And so like after that investigation, she was like, are you ready to do this? And I was like, yeah, I think I am. So we formed this team, and she had brought a couple people that we had known, and that a couple that she had known, and here we are.
And how many?
Wow.
How many of you are on the team?
As of today, there are 9.
Wow.
Yeah, and we all have like differing levels of like experience and differing levels of like reasons why we're here, because everybody's got different reasons for why we're in the field. So we really have everything from scientists to skeptics to UFO people to, really, we have a very well-rounded team.
I love that. So like everybody brings something different to the table. That's amazing. So Rachel, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the team and become friends with everybody? Oh, we can't hear her.
Oh, wait, you might have to
Oh, there.
hit.
There you
There
go.
you go. There you go.
Sorry about
He's
that.
like, wait, you heard it before. All right, you can
Yeah.
hear. You can. Okay, good. You heard me, right?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm one of the newer members of the team. I joined about a year ago. And I had met one of the other members. Her name is Raina. I met her just out and about, and we got to talking, and she said, I'm part of an all-girl paranormal team. And I thought, oh my God, you are here? And she said, yes. And she said, we might be looking for some members soon. So she said, here's how you reach out to us. And I did. And initially they weren't ready at that moment to bring me on. And then I ran into them at a paranormal con locally. And they said, hey, you're the girl that reached out to us. And I said, yeah, I am. And so once they got to meet me, they were like, we want to give you a shot and see what you think. And so, been with them ever since.
Wow. So, what is Chinelle? You have been having experiences since you were a little kid. What are some of the things that have happened to you that kind of like opened your eyes to the paranormal and really made you want to, be where you are today?
So yeah, I grew up in actually in York, Pennsylvania. My dad's house. We are the second family to own it, and it was built sometime between 1850 and 1875. We're not 100% sure, and records weren't so good back then. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, like my whole life I would experience all of these things, and like I remember being like 4 years old and just terrified to go upstairs by myself. Like I did not want to go up the stairs. And I just kind of grew up with it or whatever. And so I finally moved in with my dad when I was about 17. And this is when like paranormal shows were in like their infancy. So I'm not going to age myself, but it was a while ago. And and I had just started watching those. And so like some of the experience, the things that I was hearing and seeing and experiencing, they were talking about on these TV shows. And I was like, wait, what? And so I was 17 at the time. And so I went to my dad and I was like, got a question. This math ain't mathin'. There's something going on here. And was like, Dad, what? Is our house haunted? And, he was like, well, he's like, I'm going to tell you the same thing that my mother told me as a child. If you leave them alone, they're going to leave you alone. And I was like, what? Like I was floored, So that really kind of like my interest was already peaked, and then that kind of solidified like, oh my gosh. And I remember like people, because of course I was young, and people would be like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I want to be a paranormal investigator. And they're like, you want to what? Yeah, I want to be a parapsychologist when I grow up. That's still my goal when I grow up.
Oh, wow. And Rachel, has anything ever happened to you as a kid that kind of like me, I could tell? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was probably around similar age to Chinelle when I had a first experience. It was at a friend's house, and and I lived in California, so it wasn't as old as Chinelle's up in the East, but the house was an older for that area that we lived in near San Francisco Bay Area, and her father was telling us that, there's been some strange stuff that's been happening. And she said, we used to think that my friend that as a little kid, she just had an imaginary friend that she was all the time talking with, playing with, full on conversations with. That's the whole story. As we're like, there's a few of us kind of like standing in a circle around her dad as he's telling us this story. And all of a sudden I get like a full on tap on the shoulder.
Oh.
And nobody was around me. And and I was like, oh my God. I was like, did any of you touch me? And they were like, what are you talking about? We're not anywhere near you. How are we going to touch you? And so from that moment on, it's sort of like, that's what kind of really piqued my interest. But I think that I've had a lot of my life, I felt that I was probably empath and I could feel different things that I kind of shut for a long time. I think I shut off because,
so did I.
You know, it's just a lot to take on.
It is. It's a lot to take on. You're scared. You're young and you don't know. And you kind of like, I guess we like build up this thing where we kind of like shield ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's so strange. And then something usually in our lives kind of like open that door back up. I know that's what happened to me. Like in my 40s, I started like, I'm like, what is going on here? I grew up in a haunted house too. And that's how it happens. Right, Phil?
100%.
Phil, do you have any questions?
I mean, I've been born haunted, so I don't know. I can't tell the difference anymore. But you know what's interesting is it's an all-female team. I like that. I like where they went with this. And the question is, do you find during paranormal investigations that there's a difference of communication with the other side when you are alone with females versus having males in a response from the spirit?
Yeah.
I have noticed that there is a difference, especially when it comes to like children's spirits, because like as women, we tend to be a little more softer, you know, and so I noticed that especially with children's spirits, they can be drawn to us, especially if we ourselves are mothers. I've really noticed that because, of course, I investigate like a lot. Like I collaborate with a lot of other teams, and the interactions that happen when, like, you know, when they're interacting with like male investigators are totally different. I've also noticed that women investigators tend to get hit on by the spirits a lot more than the male ones do. I think every single investigation we go on, they're trying to pick up one of my girls every time.
Oh my goodness. It's crazy.
Really?
I mean, we've heard of that.
That's it. That's fun. I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you get to see what they look like at least? Are they tall, dark, and handsome? Like, I mean, are they attractive spirits to say, hey, you know, they're going to take you out and pick you up in their ghost car?
I mean, the rule is if they're going to like take us out, we at least got to be able to get a picture of them or something, you know?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
But yeah, the last investigation we just went on at the Caldwell house in Russellville, Kentucky, they were trying to pick up Abigail.
Oh my goodness.
Every time.
And how do you handle that? Like, how do you, if that type of thing happens, like, how do you handle it?
Honestly, we just kind of laugh it off. You know, sometimes we have to like set boundaries and like, no. Like I'm like, because I've had it happen to me. It's like, no, I'm married. Stop touching me, because that happens. You know, just kind of like set those boundaries, be like, bro, like this ain't it. Or, you know, kind of play into it and flirt with them a little bit and see if you get a little more activity, because sometimes that works too.
You know, that's interesting. Now, there's a couple of things I want to ask you. You said they touched you. How do you feel that? Like a person or a vibration?
So it took me a long time actually to realize what it felt like when a spirit touched me, because being like very scientific based, I would chalk it up to like, it's my muscles, you know, it's like a muscle spasm, or, oh, like, you know, my arm's falling asleep. And it wasn't until, honestly, y'all, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, like a year ago, that I had spoke to one of my other friends in the field, and I was like, I got a question. And I was like, you know, sometimes I feel like that, like my muscles or whatever, or I feel kind of like tingly, like my arm's falling asleep or my foot's falling asleep, whatever, but it's not like the same type of feeling. And they're like, oh, that's because they're touching you. And I was like, I've been an investigator for this long and did not know that. Legit.
You feel tingling?
You talked about that a few days ago doing the reading of the tingling. And is that someone actually touching you? Interesting. Right, Phil? We were talking about that.
That's crazy. You know, there's a movie, I don't know if you've seen it. It's called The Entity. They dated back to the 70s. But anyway, it's about this female, and it's a document, it's supposed to be true, who was raped by the spirit. Now, being scientific and, I like to play both sides of the fence, both skeptic and believer. Is that possible?
I feel like also being a skeptical believer. And also being rooted in psychology, because y'all, that's my jam. I don't know that it's possible for that to be a human spirit.
Mhm.
I don't know. I would have to really look at the evidence and look at what else is going on, really see if there's any kind of like psychological disorders, schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, things like that. Is that going on? Before I could be like, that could be a thing.
Watch the movie when you get a chance, The Entity. There is a doctor involved. There's a lot of information. It's not just a bogus movie. This was documented. And again, it leaves you thinking the possibilities. Now, I don't know. I mean, if that is true, the way that happened to her, and, you see everything that this thing would do to her in that fashion, and that's pretty scary. That, and again, it could be a demonic entity, or it could be someone who's just a very malevolent spirit. Do they have that strength? We know that they could touch you through some form of communication or vibration, so you get a tingle. We also know you can get handprints or fingerprints on you. Have you ever gotten that before?
I have. I actually have been I actually got attacked one time, physically attacked. We were in a jail down in Lynchburg, Tennessee. And so I've had it, like my entire chest was all red. I had like marks on my back from it. So.
Oh. So what happened? Like, how did you handle that?
Well, it started because I couldn't breathe. And like Samantha and I are really in tune when we investigate together. And so like we were together in jail cell 4, and she knew walking into the building that something was up with jail cell 4. And so there's an entity up there that he's a human spirit, but he does not like women. And I, of course, ignored my own rule, which is, that like if you start to get angry or something like that, we need to leave. I ignored that, learned things that night, and also got to like provoke in a little bit. Like I was saying things like, well, there's a woman in your jail cell. What do you think about that? Had a little attitude. Well, he told me what he thought about that. And so Sam looks at me and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, dude, I'm fine. And then like a minute or two later, I'm like, dude, I can't breathe.
Oh.
So, got out of the jail completely, grounded myself, went across the street. Actually, the entire team, we all took a break. But yeah, it took about an hour and a half for me to go back into the building because it took a long time for me to get my breathing back regulated, to be honest. So yeah, just did that. And then for the rest of that night, I didn't investigate in the jail side. I investigated on the jail or the jailer side, like the house part. But I've been back there since, so I haven't had any bad experiences.
Has anything ever followed any of you home to the point where it got bad?
I haven't had any of that experience yet, but again, being newer to the team, I know it's not out of the realm of happening. Yeah. Have you, Chinelle?
I took a child home one time from a location.
Okay.
They stuck around for about a week. They were little. They really didn't do anything bad though, so I have not had any bad experiences. But yeah, I brought things home with me.
Okay. Okay, one of the most difficult, you guys have been on, how many locations would you say that you've really investigated?
I honestly don't know. We've been as far south as Mississippi. We tend to stay really between Tennessee and Kentucky. but I honestly don't know how many locations.
Okay, so
Totally
out of
we've
all the
investigated.
locations that you've been to with your team, what was the most intense and kind of like the one that really left a mark on all of you?
Oh, I think I'm going to speak for all of us when I say Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky.
Octagon Hall.
Mhm.
Okay. What happened?
That place, that is one of those locations that it doesn't matter the time of year. It doesn't matter the time of day. It's just filled with activity. It's so like the house itself was built like the 1850s. I think it was finished in the 1859, if I remember correctly. And it also, like during the Civil War, was used as a Civil War hospital. Both the Union soldiers and the Confederate soldiers were there. They used to hide, the family actually hid the Confederate soldiers from the Union soldiers when they took it over. So that's one of those places that just, there's always activity there. And one of my favorite places to be.
Okay. Wow.
I heard about that Octagon place. I think John Cushman was there, Julie, from Dinner with a Ghost. I think the Octagon is what he used to talk about. I've seen a video on that place. It's pretty wild, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel now? I know this is a topic you might not want to talk about, but I'm going to ask anyway. How do you feel about residential cases? Spit it out. She's laughing. You know I had to ask you that. Come on.
I know.
Ask you.
So, okay, we actually don't specialize in residential cases. That's not that we don't collaborate on them. That's not that we don't appreciate them because they're important to this field. But we don't specialize in those. We really specialize in established haunted locations. The reason for that is because there's a couple different reasons. Number one, because being scientific based and trying to get empirical evidence, we want to see if we can get corroborating evidence that other people have gotten before. That's also why we go back to like local locations. That's why we do that a lot. That way then we can get like the same thing possibly happen. The other reason that we don't do or don't specialize in residentials is because there's a big psychological component. So with now I will tell you full disclosure, like I get people all the time that'll email me, call me, talking about, I got activity in my home. I literally looked through 30 videos, like 2 or 3 weeks ago from this person that was like, I think that there's, my kid's like being like afflicted. And I looked at it, I was like, no, but I took the time to go through all of that evidence and called him back. The other reason, so there's a lot of psychology that goes into residential cases. The other reason, of course, is safety. We've had experiences where people have called us up, and full disclosure, men specifically have, called us or sent us emails talking about, we want this particular person to come and investigate, the house. And it's like, we don't do that. I had one time a gentleman that was like, I need you to come to my house. He was in Alabama. And I was like, well, let me get with one of this is way back in the day, also a couple years ago. I was like, well, let me get with my partner and see if we can, schedule out a time to come down there and check it out. Oh, no. I just want you by yourself.
Oh.
No, we don't do that. So
those are the trolls. Those are the trolls. Those are the people that have nothing better to do with their lives. Look, a haunting is a haunting, no matter where you are, who you are. I believe if you're an investigator, and again, you say psychology and scientific, a picture is a picture, a recording is a recording, and a haunting is a haunting, period. There's no sugarcoating it, denying the fact that if something's haunting or someone is haunted, it's haunted. Look, no one's more skeptic than me. Nobody. I'll go across everything with you, everything, and you'll have a breakdown with me before I am convinced what you're telling me, because I don't believe you, right? But when toys move by themselves with no batteries, you can't give me a scientific explanation. When pictures appear and then disappear, where these entities can shapeshift into a format, you can't give me an explanation behind that. And when there's a solid EVP, and I'm not talking about a spirit box because they're garbage to me. They're garbage. Throw them out the window. I'm talking about a recorder, a digital recorder, where you're asking a question, can you hear me, to the other side? And you're getting verbatim, yes, I can hear you. That to me is a Class A EVP. It's not hearsay, he said, she said. There's your evidence right there. And when you have that, I understand the component where you're saying, well, residential cases, there's people that drugs and, whether they have schizophrenia and bipolar and what are they actually doing to do these things. I get all that. You got to rule that out first, right? Drugs, alcohol, but evidence is evidence at the end of the day. If you have solid evidence, and I'm not talking about a REM pod because that's garbage. I'm not talking about a K2 meter. That's garbage. All these measures have been tested through cable devices. I can make a K2 go off my remote on my cable TV. That's on the 3rd floor. Bet you didn't know that. A REM pod. I could put 2 magnets together near a television and make a REM pod go off. So I go through every single aspect. But yet we know, and I know, that ghosts do exist, demons do exist, and that there's another veil right through that veil is another world. Which leads me to a question to either one of you who want to answer. What are shadow people, in your opinion?
Rachel looked at me. I'm like, okay. So in my opinion, shadow people can be either human or inhuman spirits. I think that like shadow people and poltergeists sometimes get like a bad reputation. Like people are like, oh, they're demons. No, they're just they can be human spirits that are negative or not negative. It's just how they manifest themselves.
Yeah.
On the news a few weeks ago, with this whole UFO thing, and one of the top people came forward and says that we know of interdimensional beings. Mm. And, this is not someone who just went to grade A school. This is somebody who's on the top now of the force, of our military. This is the guy who knows his stuff, right? And then you go to paranormal investigating, and we know that we have definitions, small definitions, right, for shadow people. Is it possible that shadow people are what he said they might be, interdimensional beings, where they come from somewhere else, but they can shadow into our realm, for example?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, that could be a strong possibility of what they are. I think we know so little about what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a very strong possibility. Even maybe that's what ghosts are, as far as we know.
It's interesting, and again, I've worked with a lot of teams throughout the years, and there's always some similarity between some kind of alien thing through a voice recording and ghost. And it's like, are they on that same parallel? The shadow people, from our knowledge, are intelligent beings. And they've proven that through telling us what we're going to do before we do it on recording. There's things you just can't debunk. And you say, well, how is this possible? In fact, we had someone in our own home who was texting to another investigator who was in the backyard. And on the recording of the voice, it said exactly what they were texting. Mm-hmm. And it makes you recognize. Now, this is when the shadow appeared of a figure. And it blows my mind how intelligent they are. And it has that big question mark, right? Because, look, as investigators, we all know there's never a solid answer. It's what we think it is, but we're still not certain. but somehow there's a connection somewhere between aliens and ghosts or demons, however you want to label it. There's always some type of connection there.
Yeah, I agree. It's wild. I think the bottom line is too, we always end up with more questions than answers. I mean, it's just like it just never stops. We're just always learning and learning and learning it. And then we end up with more questions. And it's, like your house that you grew up with in Chinelle. You said that, I think you said that you still don't know what's there to this day. I think that's what you said. I think it's in your bio.
It could be.
Am I right?
So we're pretty sure that it's like family members. And like one of them being my grandmother specifically, because she was like born in the house and died in the house.
Okay.
And so
Wow.
like,
Born and died.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So she'll actually, like, if something's not going her way or she sees something she doesn't like, or if my dad does not give her the proper attention that she requires, she will let him know. A couple years ago, there was a Mother's Day and he forgot to put flowers out on her like grave site because she was cremated after she passed away. And then he put out a little memorial in the backyard for her. And he forgot to put flowers out there. And all of a sudden, like, all of these things started happening in the house that my dad literally had to call and tell me about. And I was like, that's what you get for forgetting Mother's Day. Like,
well, I would probably do the same thing.
same. If I'm not doing that in the afterlife, am I afterlifing correctly?
Well, Phil, all I got to say is no one we better not forget any Mother's Day or birthdays or anything. If anything ever happens to me, I will come back and haunt you to your death.
Here comes a skeptical question. Either one of you could answer it. It's a hard question. It seems like you're on the fence of, you want the proof, which I like, right? And according to what you're telling me, you believe that ghosts exist, and ghosts can be spirits sometimes, right? Loved ones, correct?
Yeah.
I'm waiting to hear a yes.
Oh, sorry, I was shaking my head.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So here comes this. No, good. I'm a believer, so let's just put that out there, right? But on a skeptic point of view, according to religion, and there are many types of religion, we cannot communicate with the dead because the dead are dead. They only come back when the resurrection happens, according to religion, right? Now, we know as paranormal investigators, we can communicate. But according to religion, we're communicating with demons. Your answer.
I think that when you look at religious interpretations, there's thousands of them, and there's thousands of them within each specific type of religion. I also believe that religion is like personal. So even though we could be taught by, say, a Baptist minister, we all have our own personal religion as well. So when you look at Christianity, when it says like, thou shalt not conjure up demons or conjure up spirits, whatever, that could be that preacher's interpretation. But for ourselves, it's like, I can tell when I'm like talking to my grandmother, or I know when it's like my regular house spirit that just comes and goes when he pleases, where I live now. And I think that we're just able to build connections with those in the afterlife. And sometimes they carry over from when they were living. And sometimes it's, you meet them, you get to know them, you get to have conversations with them. I think that the term demon is overused a lot in this field.
According to religion, that's what you're communicating with. And it's written in the Bible, in many Bible formats, that you are communicating with demons, not the living that crossed over, because the dead are dead.
Yeah. It's tricky. tricky.
Gotcha.
that,
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's
Again, I'm a
tricky.
believer because I'm an investigator. And I believe, in my opinion, religion is a form of control. That's what I believe. And I
Absolutely.
believe that because being an investigator, I know the difference between a loved one, when you hear a song come on that reminds you of them, and you got that feeling like mom's around or dad's around or grandpa's around, or you can feel it, right? Then I'm not feeling no demon. So then there's a lot of skepticism, and there's a lot of people who go both ways of, well, I'm going to go to church and be a Catholic or a Christian, and then I'm going to be a paranormal investigator. So you're a hypocrite because you can't do both and serve both. I hate to say it, but you could believe in a higher vibration, a higher power. But if the church is telling you you cannot communicate with the dead, and you go out and investigate that night and you're communicating with the dead, well, then there's a problem, isn't there? And that's where I think science needs to come closer to both ends. There's a lot of atheists in science, right, that do not believe in anything. They don't believe in, when you're dead, you're dead. That's it, period. I think that paranormal investigators have so much credibility, but they need to bring more to the table, right? And say, well, prove it. Prove how that toy goes off when I ask it to go off when there's a spirit around. Prove it. Tell me a scientific explanation on an EVP. When I'm asking a question, I'm getting a direct answer. Can you give me a scientific explanation? Because I'd love to hear it. What are you going to tell me? A radio tower at that second, at that time of that day, somehow that came through on a broadcast? I call BS. It's not true. It's not possible. So we know this. And that's why, religion, again, it plays into this big part. I don't disrespect anyone's belief. But when it's written in stone and we're investigating and seeing something totally different that we can communicate, it raises the eyebrows, right? It's like, who wants to believe and who doesn't?
Yeah, I think you summed it up where I think it's all a matter of just what you believe. You have to take it on faith, and that's why it's called faith. And so, I mean, for me, in my personal opinion, I don't subscribe to what, religion dictates.
I agree.
Because I think there are so many religions out there, and you can't point the finger and say that one's right and that one's wrong.
Yes.
They all have some common truths to them, and so. Yeah,
I agree. I definitely agree. And it's interesting, right? Because we know what we know from our experiences. And then if you walk into a church and then try to preach that or talk about that, you get thrown out in 2 seconds. But yet we know that we can communicate. I'm not communicating with demons. I'm communicating with spirits. Could be loved ones from anybody. So it's so sensitive, the topic. And I think that, well, look, today a lot more people are receptive to paranormal investigators, right? This is, versus the 80s, you didn't even hear about this. Now it's more respected in a way where people know of communication. And you know what? I don't know any Bible talks about UFOs or aliens, and yet NASA's coming forward and our scientists are coming forward and our military is coming forward and say, we can't explain what we're seeing. But that's not in the Bible either, is it? So it leads you to believe that forms of control throughout humanity, which I believe now, and again, I don't disrespect religion, but it kind of makes sense to me that it's believe me or you're incorrect. Believe Christianity, or, if you're Catholic and it's my way or no way, or Muslim or Protestant or whatever. And there's so many of them that, I call it, me personally, I call it fake. Why don't you come out an investigation with me and let's communicate, and then give me an explanation of who I'm talking to. And don't tell me it's any demon. Okay, this is not The Exorcist. I'm not possessed. Tell me who I'm talking to. So I guess, it's to each individual what they want to believe. But there are a lot of people who are hypocrites, many of them. They'll walk into their church and pray to God and Allah and everybody else, and then at night they're investigating. Well, You can't serve two masters. What do you believe?
See,
Well, oh, go ahead, Julie.
No. I just get lost because you're right, Phil. It's like in a way that it is you're a hypocrite. Yes, but I also feel like I don't know if there's just any rules to any of this. Like I just feel like there's no rules to this. It's like I don't know. I grew up Catholic, but I still believe that in spirits, and I have friends that are witches, and I'm also a witch. I mean, it's just I just feel like there's no rules. There's just no rules, and when I say that, people get mad. So I don't know. It's just how I see it.
Well, and the Catholic Church recognizes in spiritual hauntings. I mean, they recognize demons as like legit entities. Otherwise, we wouldn't have exorcists.
Yeah.
So the Catholic Church is very much like, yes, they exist. When you look at more Protestant religions like Baptists are like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then you look at even like other cultures, so, and even just sticking with this side of the world. If you go to like Mexico, they don't believe in spirits except for like the Day of the Dead. That's it. Other than that, ghosts don't exist.
Yeah.
So, and one thing that I love and I would love to see come to fruition is like, I've always felt that paranormal is the bridge between religion and science. And like, one day when I like am grown up and all the things, I would love to actually write a book like about this, how paranormal bridges that gap between religion and science, specifically psychology, because that's my niche, but yeah, so that's my opinion on that.
That'd be really interesting. That'd be
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody in chat. So we have William Cook, Kelly Burns, and Lockbeard. They all say hello. Thanks for listening tonight. So you girls also throw a lot of events. Yes. Do you want to talk about that? What's coming up? What do you have coming up, and how could we find out about them? Who wants to go first?
Oh yeah. So of course, the month of October, we all tend to stay pretty busy, let's see. We will be hosting again this month. Octagon Hall for the third year in a row will be hosting their novice hunts. We'll be doing that the third weekend, so October 20th and 21st. That also is the weekend that we're committed to no sleep, because we will be at the Tennessee Haunts and Legends Expo during the day on the 21st. Yeah, those are the big things that we're doing this month.
Yeah.
And then next month, sorry, y'all, I'm thinking.
December is our big.
That's our big one. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So just give me it's December 9th, right, Chinelle? Yeah. Okay. So December 9th, we'll be and it's the Thomas House. And we're going to be doing an investigation there with the public. We're selling tickets, and those tickets are $100. But that goes towards the room there at the Thomas House. It's a hotel, but it's also very known to be haunted. And they provide dinner and they provide breakfast the next day as well. And so all of that money is going back to what we call the Vixen's Give Back. So every year, for at least the past 2 years, is that right, Chinelle? I think the first year they did it, we adopted like one family. And then this last year we did 2 families, and we really helped to give them Christmas that they most likely would have.
Oh, that's so nice. That's
great.
So this year we're hoping to do even more. We're looking to maybe do maybe give back to a charity where we can help more people than normally could, because there were a lot of families that got nominated last year, and it was a really tough decision, I think, for us to decide, because so many deserve to have such a,
Yeah.
you know,
That must be hard.
with single moms.
do.
And yeah, it was really difficult to make that decision, but
Yeah.
you get to see the rewards when you bring them Christmas.
Oh, that's so nice. I really appreciate that. That's really nice. That's really nice. So, question. So there's so many teens and young children that are kind of like venturing into the paranormal, right? What would your advice be to these young kids that are just diving into it all the wrong way? And do you like it? Like, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I like that there's an interest there, and I think that's wonderful. I think as far as them trying to dive into something inexperienced, I think that they should probably consider, you know, just doing a little bit more research first, and before they dive into trying to investigate locations and potentially run into harm.
Yeah. I think
I
so
also-
many. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I also feel like that when you get into this field, it can be a lifelong commitment. And deciding to do that. Now, granted, once again, a lot of us got our interest, you know, at a young age as teenagers. But it really can be a lifelong commitment. And like Rachel said, they can get hurt. And I feel like that because there has been a lot of people who've been able to capitalize on the YouTube thing. I feel like that as long as they come in, well, first off, I don't believe they really should be investigating until they're, you know, at least 18. That's my own personal opinion.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, like, and making sure, you know, that they are, you know, doing it for the right reasons. Everybody's got their own reasons for being in the field, you know, but there's wrong reasons to be in the field as well. And especially if you're just going to go and portray your locations to be things that they're not, or portray there to be things that happen that have not, because that does nothing to help the field. It really just decredits the field, you know, and those of us that are trying to really make this a legit science in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it just bothers me when I see all these little kids, you know, picking up Ouija boards and just they don't have no idea what they're doing, and it's sad, it's scary. They don't have anybody to mentor them, and we did it, and you know, we know what could happen from experience doing those things at very young ages, and it's scary. And
If you have intent and you communicate, you know, then you're opening up a doorway to you don't know what. And
exactly.
it's not always good. It could be the most evil thing ever. Here's a question for you. Another skeptical question that people would ask, you know, investigators. So you go to a location that you know is haunted, right? Like you went to the Octagon. Now I know that's haunted from people I know, right? And are you telling us it's haunted because you're going there and those spirits can't leave there because their choice of free will is to be there on that side? Or is it possible through some form of psychosomatic power of thought, you think you're there and you're communicating with nothing other than yourself? Again, that's what a skeptic would add. So feel free however you want to format that.
I love this question because I love psychology, and I know very well how our minds can play tricks on us. So I absolutely love this because honestly, both answers are plausible. It 100% can be mind over matter, or it can 100% be spirits that are there, have been there for the last 150 plus years, because math is hard right now, apparently. I think that's more than 150 years. I don't know. Anyway, spirits that have been there for a while, you know, are also stuck there, or they choose to remain there. One of the spirits that I believe remains there because she chooses to is Mary Elizabeth. You know, she was a 12-year-old little girl that caught fire, in the winter kitchen, and she died a couple days later in her bedroom. You know, so that's her home. That's what I believe. However, it very much could just be my own brain, like, hey, let's just make you think something that's not actually here. I think it's 100% plausible, both answers.
Okay, then where's the proof that you have of a ghost being in that location? Do you have a picture? Do you have an EVP?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have on our team, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we really don't put out a lot of evidence. And that's for one of two reasons. Number one, I'm a busy woman. I have a real life. I have a job. I have a family. And it's a lot of work to go through evidence. The other reason is because we only put out what we consider to be hard evidence. That's going to be your EVPs. That's going to be your like legit video footage that I can't look at and be like, it could just be pixelation or lighting. So that's why we don't put out a lot of evidence. But at Octagon Hall, we do have hard evidence. We had a candle turn on by itself. That was pretty cool. We've had EVPs there. Sorry, y'all. And I mean, then there's personal experiences, which we don't discount personal experiences, but we don't consider those evidence because it's not concrete.
Right. Okay. So you're telling me and the world you have solid evidence at one location specifically. And this girl died in a fire. Now let's think about this logically. She died in a fire. If you died in a fire at a location, why would you want to remain there? Is it because you remained there before the fire and the fire never existed? Or do you keep re-going through the fire?
I think when it comes to her specifically, I think it's just because that was her home. And that's why she stays there. She didn't die like immediately. She died from actually her burn wounds a couple days later. I think the estimation is she lived for about a week. And she just couldn't recover from the burn wounds. So for her specifically, I think it's just that's her home, you know, kind of like my grandmother, you know, that's her home. But I feel like that for other spirits that may have experienced similar things, like specifically like drownings, you know, how they like will continue to haunt like lakes or streams or something. It's because they're reliving that and they can't get out of that loop.
Okay. Yeah. I agree.
It's interesting. And I always say we have free will, we have choice on the other side, right? We're energy cannot be created nor destroyed, so it goes through different dimensions of timelines. Now, in my personal belief and experience and opinion, maybe, just maybe, if you are communicating and you have intelligent responses, it's how it was with that spirit, not how it turned out to be. Which means if you had an old Victorian house that burnt down, then you have new construction put over that house, okay, an apartment building. But yet there's a haunting in the apartment building. It's possible, very possible, it kind of reminds me of the movie Beetlejuice in a way, where they're still coexisting in that time frame because time doesn't exist, right? We've made up time. And they're actually living in a way we just don't understand. And then when we try to cross the realm through communication with our devices and our pictures and whatever forms of method that we use, somehow we're connecting in between both worlds.
It could be.
Because, you know, has that spirit, that specific girl spirit told you something intelligent, not a word, an intelligent response saying, hey, this is where I am and this is where I want to be because I chose to be and this is what I see.
Truthfully, no, I haven't gotten that, but I would love to, by the way. Mary Elizabeth, if you can hear me.
It also reminded me of the movie The Others. I don't know if you saw that one with Nicole Kidman. Yeah, it sort of is like that.
Yeah.
Where she doesn't know she's dead.
Yeah.
You know, the kids kind of they know that they're dead.
Yeah. We always bring up that movie.
That's a great movie. And the
Yeah.
movie makes a lot of sense to me too, in a way, right? I mean, for all we know, we're the ghost.
Yeah.
Correct. To them, we're the ghost. To us,
I believe
they
that.
are.
So many. I honestly believe that in a lot of different outlets. I believe that to be true. It's crazy.
Well,
Do
and some
they
of
do
the stuff too is like we could be running into residual hauntings.
True.
Like we're getting a recording of something that happened in time that the environment recorded it.
Yes.
And we're just getting playback of that.
Yes. Like the stairs, Phil. You always talk about the stairs. Tell me about the stairs.
Footsteps.
How?
Well, like the stairs don't exist where you're located, but you hear someone going up and down the stairs, only to know that a previous house that was there years ago had the stairs. And that happens a lot. We hear a lot of stories like that, and that kind of tells me, like, well, maybe that time, that frame still does exist with that person and those spirits. We just think it's not there because we look at reality differently and our perception of what it really is, but maybe we have it wrong.
Right, because we think time is linear and it might not be. It might be cyclical.
True. It's fascinating. The whole topic is fascinating. And the fact that we can communicate is more fascinating than more fascinating. So I think you're doing a great job. I love it. I like the old female thing. And, I would say keep up the great work. And, let's just try to get more people on board to do these investigations and bring the evidence out to the world, right? That's why Julie and I do the show. We like to have people like yourselves on, and this is knowledge, and one day this will be written in books, right? Yeah. And one day this will be accepted as we can communicate with the other side to a degree of understanding through consciousness that right now we're still not there. So, my hat goes off to both of you and your whole team. Keep it up and spread the word and get the evidence. And there's a lot of equipment out there that, again, I hate to say it, but it's garbage. If a cable remote can make something go off, the best evidence is the EVP through a digital recorder, right? You can't debunk that. Yeah. It is what it is. Pictures are okay, but pictures can be optical illusions and matrixing, and one person says, well, I see this and I see that, and it's not even valuable at one point. Devices of communication and validation is the most important thing to paranormal investigators, to prove to everybody that we go on through other forms of existence, and yes, we can communicate. And listen for that song on the radio, listen for the sign, because loved ones are all around us. I believe that too. And communication is validation.
And we miss them a lot. We miss the signs a lot because we're like you said, we're busy. We're busy. We're working. We're busy. And so many times I feel like, they're sending us signs and we just miss them.
Yeah, or we're just not open to them.
Yeah.
Like, because I think so many people are closed off and they don't want to believe what they're seeing or hearing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this show has been an amazing show. Girls, thank you for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. Kelly, thank you. Lockbeard, thank you so much. William Cook, again, thank you for joining us. They were all in chat listening. Where could we find you girls? Again, tell us.
So on Facebook, or just look up Elite Vixen Paranormal, Instagram, TikTok, the internet. If you just Google Elite Vixen Paranormal, we're gonna pop up. We do have a YouTube channel also. And yeah, we've really appreciated being on here. I knew, like we were talking, this is gonna be a great show, and I knew it was. And I'm so excited.
He's got some hard questions. I mean, sometimes I'm just like, what?
Yeah, and I love that. I love that. That outside of the box questioning instead of the standard. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I did too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on to Horsefly Chronicles Radio, and to all our guests and listeners. Girls, keep up the great work, and get out there and let's get that evidence. And Julie, wrap it up.
All right. Special thank you to Carnation for fully sponsoring the show from day one. We love them. Thank you. Please join us next week on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, girls. Have a great night. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.